Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the Yo Video Games Podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for 335 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/Yo Video Games Podcast. Dude of the week is Ziggy Z. Thank you, Ziggy.
Thank you, Ziggy Z.
Also
Hey,
producer.
long time.
I mean, for forever. I think from day one.
Yeah, and unfortunately not the happiest of episodes, but there's some fun stuff in here though too. There's definitely it's definitely going to be it's a tell-all. It's an true Hollywood story style scoop of an episode.
The thing is like none of this is surprising. I've worked as a contractor for a long time.
That is the worst part about it. But you know what is good? You know what is good? Summer. You know what's good to have for summer?
Clean balls.
Clean balls. That's right. I was going to say summer bod, but you know what? Clean balls definitely takes priority on the totem of the tier ranking.
Yeah, we got our sponsor to thank, and they're in the business of cleaning your balls up, taking care of your balls, taking care of some of the most sensitive areas in your life. And right now, they just launched last week the Ultra Smooth package. It's a relaunch of their very popular item. So that's if you want to, get that close shave on the balls.
You want to get that like my head looks like Terry Crews's his top of his head like that beautiful me stands proud, nothing getting in the way.
Me on a haircut day. Or if you want to be more like me right now and just have a little speckling,
want a little royal ruggedness, little character.
Then you want to get the performance package, 4.0. That comes with the lawnmower 4.0. That comes with the boxers. That comes with the crop reviver and the crop preserver.
Deodorant for your junk.
Yeah. So you're going to be smelling great, looking great, and now is the perfect time to do that. And if you want to do that, head over to manscaped.com, use our code YOVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide, right? That's manscaped.com, YOVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Thank you, Manscaped.
and thank you for keeping my balls nice and clean.
Thank you for caring about my balls.
Yeah, like I said, performance is if you want, like it's an electric razor, multiple different sizes, and then the ultra smooth is for like, man, I want my dick to look like ET, no hair on it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is water won't fuck with either of them. So, really both great for your gym bag.
And one comes with a top kit, so
yeah. Overall, you're not really going to screw up by going to Manscaped for your junk taking care, your junk care, junk care.
Urgent care for your junk.
Urgent junk care. Speaking of urgent care, fucking this IGN article has straight up, I don't know if it's a punch to the nuts for Nintendo. I feel like there's going to be some fanboys that are really hurt by this or outright...
So this is going to be an interesting episode because here's the thing. People still get real defensive for their sacred cows. And the narrative around a company being a piece of shit is always different when that company makes something you like. Now, when Activision had all of its fucking miserable... horrible, disgusting, definitely morally
repugnant.
Repugnant. Legally, we'll see what happens. Although not much. People didn't care as much because Call of Duty sucks. I played and it sucks, and Blizzard's kind of been on on people's shit list for a while. Easy to hate, right? Ubisoft, same deal. I'm like,
shooters.
Even if you enjoy their games, it's a lot of Ubisoft conferences are always it's easy to hate Ubisoft. They make Just Dance and blah blah blah. But when it's Nintendo, people have a different fucking attitude.
The Disney of gaming. in terms of fan
it's
base.
I like Nintendo. They make things that I like. They can't be bad. It's like I don't know if it's a guilt thing. It's not a guilt thing. Like, look, you can love bro, Nintendo makes
Well,
great games, but like, let's be honest, they've had some shitty fucking people work there. They've said some pretty said some pretty fucking shitty things, and they are continuing to do shitty fucking things on a corporate level to the people who work for them. Like, and this is
Nintendo,
true of everyone. Like, I don't want to do that as a sort of like, get out of jail free card, because that's what a lot of people also do. Like, well, every company's bad. Yes, Jan, every company's bad.
yes.
Every giant corporation is bad, but that doesn't mean you don't report on it. That doesn't mean you don't bring it up. That doesn't mean you don't address the fucking issue, because the issue never fucking goes away if you just throw your hands up and say, well, everywhere's bad. Well, no shit. Like, maybe we could work towards moving to changing that. So
It's like that meme where it's all like, I think we should improve society somewhat, and yet, curiously, you participate in
you
society.
participate
I
in
am very
society.
smart.
I'm very smart.
But one
So
thing I think about Nintendo that is interesting compared to other companies, especially in gaming, is like what happens with Disney, where people connect their personality or their identity to their fandom of Nintendo.
yeah, you are not an extension
And
of
it is.
Nintendo or Disney. You are not some weird like parasitic lump. You are not the male anglerfish, to
I might be.
Nintendo's female anglerfish. That's some discovery. I'm sorry if that's way too. I'm sorry if that's way too in depth for some people. Whatever, look it up. It's gross.
Too soon. I just learned about anglerfish.
Oh, really?
No.
um anyways, you are not a limb of them. You are not some like important digit on their fingers. Like, you are your own individual person, and this giant corporation is not you. It is not part of you. It doesn't even really particularly like you. It just wants to fucking suck your money
Yeah.
out of you. That's all it wants. It just wants your money at the end of the day. Like, it only exists to get your money. Now, there are
So-
artists and imaginative and creative types that work there, but they are cogs in a machine, for what a overall larger corporation that exists to suck
Yeah.
money out of you.
So some background information that we should just they talk about it a little bit later in the article, and I feel like it's actually important to talk about up front. And that is the relationship, especially in software companies, between contractors and these
Yeah.
larger corporations. And I've done this style of job. Contracting is always sort of difficult, and realistically, as a contractor, I can tell you that nothing in this article really is that surprising
Yeah.
or even really that bad necessarily, because a lot of it's perspective. But um, why do they use contractors? Let me say that first.
Well, here's the thing. The whole what happened here is that what happened. And this was brought up about a week or so ago when someone filed a lawsuit saying that a third party company, a company Nintendo outsources to hire contractors,
Right.
was doing anti-union practices, was basically trying to silence them, spying on them, kind of thing. Like,
So the
yada
game,
yada.
the game here for any major company, but it's much more popular
Yeah.
in software companies right now. Is
Now, it sounded like at first this was one person talking about one company that Nintendo outsources to, but this has opened a bit of a floodgates.
because this is
to-
every company does this. So they hire a smaller company that then hires a contractor as sometimes as an employee. So Nintendo doesn't actually employ this person. They have a contract with this other company that employs this person. And then that contractor takes on, instead of doing what normally is a contractor's job, which is a very specific, task-oriented position, you do everything that an employee does. Usually it's
Yes.
very opaque. You take on loads of responsibility sometimes. And at some companies, you are a second-class citizen. You get treated like absolute shit by the corporation themselves so that you can't take advantage of any of the benefits. Not every
Yeah.
company's like that. Apparently, Nintendo very much is. I guess, why would you be shocked by that? It's hierarchical in nature, not that surprising. But to lay down the foundation is like a lot of it is they want to be able to get rid of this cost of employee at a moment's notice, and they don't want to give these people any of the benefits that they have to give to their employees. So they want to be known for being great places to work if you're an employee. But contractors aren't employees, so they get none of the benefits. Now, contractors usually get paid fairly well, but they go out of their way to not give you any of the niceties.
Yeah, and the other thing
So-
too is that they don't. There'll be 11th month contracts, and they won't even begin
Right.
to think about it for like you have to take a 2 month off, so you
Yeah,
have to like
not-
not work for 2 months.
And not every company does that, and it depends on where you're at and how they structure it. The reason why you do that is because they don't want you to accidentally be able to be classified as an employee. So like one of the reasons why other companies will hire that middleman company is then that middleman company has to treat you like an employee, take care of all the taxes, do all that stuff, and the bigger company just writes a check every month, right, or every quarter. They just send that out, and then they don't have to deal with you as an employee. You're not an employee. They don't give a fuck about you. You're solving a problem for them. You are a project by project basis,
Right.
even though you're doing an employee's job. Now, again, we shouldn't necessarily paint this as this is terrible, because as a contractor, you know your contract's going to end. That doesn't make it an easier job to do, but it is something that, like, I know from experience, you can't be on a contract and expect to get an employee's benefits. Like, I don't know why you would have that expectation, because that's not, you're told very clearly up front. And granted, some companies interface very well with contractors and treat them very well, and you're a part of a team of employees too, and blah, blah, blah. And clearly Nintendo doesn't do any of that. Clearly they separate you very distinctly within their organization, and that shit sucks. But I want to soften this article a little bit, because it makes it seem like these people were bamboozled into and you're not. You sign a contract, they tell you very clearly up front, and in a lot of cases you're getting paid more money than you would have been being hired in a lot of cases, not every case. But you're getting more raw money versus, the benefits. Not to say that those benefits don't outweigh that money that you're getting. I'm just saying, like, that's the trade-off a lot of the time. So with that, we should jump into this, because this article is, I think, image shattering for
It'll be image shattering for some people, but
for Inoue specifically, because Inoue presents this
let's get into that. This is specifically about Nintendo of America.
Yeah.
This is not about NCL. We don't really know a lot about what goes on at NCL, honestly. They're a very closed off secret company, and that's actually a reoccurring theme. They're secretive to NOA.
Yeah.
So the people in this article are like, they've had to do they still have to deal with the super secretive nature of NCL, even working at NOA or as a contractor. And I think there's another thing that I really kind of got to stress is, like, interesting. This is not how Nintendo's always been. And I'm going off the words of the ex-contractors who they spoke to in this article.
Well, I think Iwata was an aberration, right? He was just a great leader.
And Reggie, apparently, too. He's actually come out and talked to the Washington Post about this today. Just the quote from Reggie in the headline: "This isn't the Nintendo I left." Which I don't know if he's just covering his ass or what. But anyways,
in the article they talk about around 2015 is when the problems started.
Yeah, and that's
Reggie
when
didn't
Reggie
leave until
was-
2019. So
he was kind of winding down, though. Like you started to see him less and less.
but he was still.
But like
our
Reggie was
president,
definitely there when things were getting kind of rough, I would say. But this really started to happen around the mid 2010s. It sounds like when this shit really started to go to shit.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is kind of because, like, the Wii U was failing, and then there was a sort of like scrambling over what to do.
So what was going to shit? Let's clear that up right now.
I think things were getting uneasy and tense with the Wii U's failure. And then Iwata dies, and now you do not have that leadership any longer.
Yeah.
And I think everything starts to sort of like roll into it, where they're like, they don't want to, they kind of like I think it's almost from like a sort of fear. They just stop hiring him like full-time employees. Like they're afraid to bring the Wii U's doing terrible. Things are going bad. Now Iwata's dies. We're not on a hiring spree.
So
Let's try to like and they talk about it in the article too about how they trying to get people to retire. Like they're trying to get rid of people.
because it's actually especially if your benefits package is good, it's actually fairly hard to get rid of full-time employees. Like one, most companies don't actually want to get rid of those employees if they don't have to. But again, a contractor is it's a fixed expense that they know they can get rid of at a moment's notice. So it's infinitely easier to scale up and unfortunately, it sounds like in this case, abuse the shit out of contractors with terms of workload. You know, the other thing about contracting in all aspects, most of the time, contractors get to determine, you know, how they execute. There are some companies and some Silicon Valley, it's popular in Silicon Valley, but some Silicon Valley companies that basically treat you like an employee and you're on call and you gotta, and that comes down a lot of times to managers, how they want to manage their contractors.
And that was something that I really there's a tiny part in this article, and that really kind of really stuck out to me. You know, as this one person saying, as I was there longer, I got more responsibilities. I realized how much difference between what a contractor does, what an employee does is meaningless. One of the things that I was really disappointed by was seeing them hire no more project managers. A project manager is the direct liaison between NCL Japan and PTD, which is personal testing and development in Penaway.
Project and development and testing.
Product testing and development. Basically, Nintendo Japan, Nintendo America. Direct liaison between the two for a single project, usually. Only now, because we're jamming more and more work onto single individuals, I think you tend to have two projects now. That actually kind of shocked me that I'm like that they're actually doing worse with project management at NOA.
Well,
it's just like Jesus. Like while you're and here's the crazy thing: they're super successful right now, so they're not going to see any need to change any of this shit.
So project management is it's really hard. Like a project manager, like they it is its own career path in a lot of ways. There's a reason why a very good project manager is sought after. And, you know, in one of my most recent contracts, like part of the deal was that you had to juggle a bunch of other people's timelines and projects to execute on whatever. So even though technically I wasn't managing their projects, I had to manage multiple timelines in order to prioritize and get projects, you know, published and out on time. That's one of the most stressful things, period. Even though it, you know, like none of those people were dicks to me. Like I mean, there was one guy who was kind of a dick, but you know, like it's not like people are screaming at you all the time, but you're doing everything you can to sort of balance stuff. It's why, you know, a production supervisor or a production coordinator on a film is the hardest working dude. Like they are just, I mean, sweating bullets all day long. This guy Dan, who was my PC at the last production company I was at, I mean, did it beautifully, but he was always there before I got there. He was always there after I was leaving. He was always 10 steps ahead. He always knew the next thing. Was like if I thought if I was going to have a problem, I was going to have a question that I had to go to Dan with. Usually he would get to me 15 minutes before I was going to go talk to him, and he would tell me, you know, whatever the answer to the question I didn't even know I had yet. That's a production coordinator, and that's a project manager a lot of the time. You know, a good one is like it's a difficult job. It's not something you can't just be a project manager and, you know, whatever else. Like project management,
it's not
is
like
its
I'm
own
an
thing.
executive producer. I don't know, whatever. I collect checks.
Executive producers are their own thing too. I got a lot of respect.
It depends on the industry and everything. Like,
well, in
like
TV, we're
like
executive
this big
producers.
celebrity is an exec producer of this show or this.
Oh, well, that's about healthcare most of the time. That's about healthcare and points on the back end. So that you get your PG. So the Producers Guild of America has the best healthcare and benefits
Nice.
of any of them. And so a lot of actors will eventually get their producer's credits because you get better points as a producer and you get better benefits as a producer, is my understanding. I've never been a producer
It makes a lot of sense.
in that
It really does.
capacity.
One of the shocking things about for the production manager side of things that I kind of also thought was kind of, it's not a huge part of the article, but I thought it was like really kind of crazy to point out was this is not just contractors either. It also goes for anyone working on an initiative that has lost its luster, like Nintendo's mobile games, which have steadily been shuttered as the company has moved in other directions. Even successful mobile games like Fire Emblem Heroes suffer from this, with writers being expected to research characters via fan wikis due to an overall lack of documentation.
That was a wild thing to read.
While there are copy editors on hand to enforce style and consistency, the process is often disorganized, making the feeling of being relegated to the B team that much more acute. Like, man, so there's like there's a couple things to unpack there where it's like basically like they lose support if the project is not like doing gangbusters within Nintendo, or if they're not really interested in anymore, like they kind of just like let that team drift out to sea. And
well, this is another thing that like are the teams siloed? Is that what's going on? Like they're standalone where, they're otherwise kind of ignored.
Well, they talk about how at the beginning of the article how they're in like the old office building that used to be a warehouse, where like the new campus.
Well, the contractors definitely are across
Yeah.
the way, and they're not allowed to access any of the amenities of the new.
Yeah, like that all just
That's
sounded like
nuts.
horrible, but it also sounded kind of like frankly like consistent. Like, oh, you're a contractor, but you're not allowed to go to the to play these special like soccer, like you can't go to like the gyms, the
Yeah.
sports arenas.
I've never
like,
heard that.
blah blah blah, like all this other stuff, because you're not really an employee. Like they call it the red badge and the blue badge. The blue badge contractor, red badge
Yeah.
is a full time. And
The
then
place
like
I was at, it was a yellow badge.
I
if you were a
guess
contractor.
they can eat at the on-site Cafe Mario, but like there's a lot of side eyeing if you're there too long or whatever.
Mhm.
There's a lot of really
Yeah.
horrible like nitty gritty, but like I just thought that one thing was just kind of crazy to me, that I'm like, they don't even give them documentation for their own projects, their own fucking series. Just go fucking look up a wiki.
Yeah, that's wild. This is another thing where like I got lucky in my experience with that, where the team I was on, like yeah, eventually they like give you that little scarlet letter C in all of your documentation.
Yeah,
And people do, like there's other teams when they're trying to push you for special treatment, they'll try to like lord over you that you're a lowly contractor. But I got lucky. I had a great team that I was on, and like that team backed me, and I wasn't based in the home office. So, but every contractor that was got to go in and use all the same facilities, and had access to every like.
Here's
it's
the
just a
thing
weird.
that I want to know, where I'm like, is this a contractor company thing, or is this an NOA thing? Because it doesn't make anyone look good.
This sounds like it's NOA hiring contractors, not hiring a separate company to hire those contractors.
Here's the one. Talking about what it was like to work at NOA, one former contractor describes the culture in their department as stilted and oddly formal, with employees apologizing profusely if they left even 15 minutes early. At first, I attributed it to being a Japanese company and the expectations that came with it, but it was very much reinforced by the full-time staffers, meaning NOA employees. It seemed like you had to be connected all the time, they told IGN.
Mhm.
They talk about the bureaucracy involved with being a contractor at NOA, describing how they would have to account for virtually every minute of their day on a timesheet, breeding paranoia about leaving their desk for even a minute, lest Microsoft, I don't know what this means, lest Microsoft Teams, they're highlighted, so I guess that's
it's a product.
software.
Microsoft Teams, when you're not actively using your workstation, will put you idle.
Breeding paranoia about leaving their desk for even a minute, lest the Microsoft Teams software mark them as idle.
Mhm.
At one point, tired and ill amid a strict schedule, they attempted a tried and true trick from The Simpsons, using a household item to depress the insert key to keep the idle message from appearing.
Yeah.
It was like Homer with the bird, except I didn't cause any problems at the nuclear plant. You couldn't even really go to the bathroom without someone noticing you were away from your desk, they remember. At Nintendo of America, many employees are paranoid about posting on social media lest they be reprimanded or even fired. That has happened. Translators are a constant feature of life as messages are translated and retranslated. Taking time off can be frowned upon and viewed as putting more of a burden on your teammates. That's gaslighting. Sick days include fervent apologies and promises to be in touch.
So there's a show on HBO Max right now called Tokyo Vice, and I don't know how accurate it is, but supposedly it's a fairly good window into especially like 90s Japanese corporate culture. And if that's even half true, like corporate culture in Japan is strict. Strict.
Yeah. So like we sit here and people talk about like the pecans and all the like the overbearing how terrible Amazon is, and I'm like, yes, how terrible Amazon is. You know who else is terrible? Nintendo.
Well, that's something that we also forget. They're not talking about the corporate side. Any of these companies, namely Amazon, when they talk about how horrible it, like being a corporate exec or a corporate employee for a lot of these companies is fucking sweet. Like it's not nearly as, it's why they have such a good image as employers.
Yeah. And they talk about that a lot, about how like there's like this brand image about it, and
yeah,
especially for like full timers, but like the full staffers, but like they very rarely ever hire people on to be actual NOA employees. And here's where we kind of like already talked about it, but most employees that I generally spoke with agree the NOA culture started to shift around 2015. It was a particularly tumultuous period in Nintendo's history, known for its struggles with the Wii U and the sudden death of CEO Satoru Iwata. It was a sharp contrast to the opening of a new NOA headquarters just 5 years before, when the company was still enjoying the double success of the DS and the Wii, two of the biggest bets in Nintendo history. Jen, a former contractor who worked at Nintendo, remembers both these eras. She said, when I was there, contractors actually had a path to employment in 2009. You could be a phone rep and an NOA Red Badger. And I started aiming for that. I am pretty high, trying to get as many cases as possible. Business was booming for Nintendo in 2009. In December alone, Nintendo sold some 3 million Wii consoles. But yeah, then they kind of go on with, the whole like 3DS kind of had a rough launch, and then the Wii U did even worse. And yeah, when I first got there, they're trying to get rid of people. This is in 2013. Or no, sorry, not in 2013, but later on. Just 2015, I guess. When I first got there, they were trying to get rid of people. You could tell because they wanted people to retire. They were getting lots of benefits so they could get new people in. They kind of gave up on that. Now they're just terrified to hire people, says the current contractor.
Yeah, so what is Reggie has a great quote about from his new book apparently. About what it was like when he was first starting and how they had no like upskilling and no
I got the quote right here for you. When I was being recruited, this is Reggie talking. When I was being recruited, I'm at lunch. So Reggie got recruited like 2004 to come on. I'm at lunch with the head of human resources for Nintendo of America. No job offer in hand. First visit to NOA headquarters, meeting with the head of human resources, and I'm asking about people-oriented initiatives. What do you do from a learning and development perspective? What do you do from the perspective of enabling people to get exposure to new and different thinking and other ways of upskilling into the organization? That's Reggie asking this to Nintendo. And his answer to me was, Reggie, we don't do that here. I'm taken aback, and he continues, Japanese parent. Our parent doesn't believe in this, therefore we don't implement it. And I literally said, that is not consistent with my beliefs. It is not consistent with what I believe a leader needs to do to develop an organization and to enable it to long-term to be successful.
Which, if he did actually say and implement those. So something that I think should also be talked about is you got to remember in these memoirs that CEOs are presenting the absolute best version of it. Like Bob Iger's memoir makes him sound like the most down-to-earth, homesy, sweetheart dude ever. And also he was just a cutthroat, great businessman, but also just super sweet.
This book that Reggie just released, is very much that for video games, right?
Yeah. So, I want
Disrupting
to believe
the Game is the name of it, by the way.
Right. I want to believe that Reggie did that, but also
Well, it does line up because he comes in 2004, and then the other contract employees talked about how great it was in 2009, and then it changed in 2015. So it kind of sounds like that was what was going on.
Yeah, so things were
Um,
great while things were great, basically.
yeah.
2015, when things started to take a turn for the worse, Reggie had to tighten some belts, and he wants to pretend that it wasn't like that while he was there, but
But it kind of was.
yeah.
He says, he quotes, "In the end, I judge my legacy by that when I retired, as well as the head of a human resource who I had that initial lunch with. He and I retired the same day, and as we retired, we promoted people internally into a variety of different roles versus bringing people in from the outside. To me, that was a testament that we had done a great job of improving and growing the culture at Nintendo of America." Um,
Well, that and they couldn't get rid of anybody.
yeah.
So they didn't bring anybody new in because they
Yeah.
couldn't hire anyone.
Yeah, at this point, I'm 3 years retired from Nintendo of America, and I can't comment on what's going on today with the company, within the company. What I can say is that while I was there, we routinely hired contract employees in as permanent employees. We did it repeatedly. And interestingly, if you look at the number of well-known personalities within Nintendo of America, a lot of them started as contract employees 10, 15, or 20 years ago. So it's always been a positive part of the culture to recruit in the very best of the contract employees into the company. So I've read the same stories as Reggie's still talking. I've read the same stories. This division between contract and full-time employee, all I can say is that is not at all the culture that I left as I retired from Nintendo. But it's like, but it does kind of sound like this started 4 years before you retired. But I don't know.
Well, so that's the other thing that I was going to say is a lot of these companies, pretty much all of them, use contract because they can get rid of contractors easily.
Yeah,
They use contracting as a sort of ground level to see if you're worth investing in as an employee. Like I know a few contractors who got looped, which is what they call it when, they loop you into being an FTE rather than going through the full process of, because the hiring process can take 6 months at a lot of these companies. The
yeah,
vetting and the interview process and the testing and all that shit. When you get looped because you've been a contractor there for at least a year and they know you can do the job and they know you're doing it well, you can be looped within a couple of months.
hmm
That being said, it is rare, and also we should. I'm not saying this is the case for all of them, but we should remember that, you know, uh, not every one of these contractors is some stellar rock star fucking employee who, if Reggie's saying like we take the
yeah,
best, yeah, it's probably pretty fucking rare because it's not like everyone can be the best. I'm not
yeah,
defending being a shithead to contractors. I'm just saying that one, I don't understand why this would be that shocking. Contracting's difficult. I don't really like it
yeah.
that much, but I don't know. You don't get into contracting and then get shocked that you can be let go,
hmm
or you don't get employee benefits, or because that's part of the game.
Yeah, I think though. I mean, you can't be shocked, but I mean, still though, like going back to this article, this person they called Jen, she left for it talks about when she finally left. After years of pursuing a full time position in a way, she finally gave up after being declined a position. Jen had been earlier
Mhm.
forced to return home in the midst of the interview process due to the death of her sister, leading the interviewer to tell her that she had attendance issues.
Yeah, that's super
The,
shitty.
Demoralizing as, and that's what NOA said. That is not a contract employee. And an NOA employee said, "I'm not hiring you because you have a attendance issue because you had to go home, to because your sister
Yeah.
died." Yeah.
Uh,
Demoralizing as that moment was, Jensen more or less checked out after that point. And it was only after departing Nintendo and finding a job that offered her what she describes as 3 times as much money for much less work that she was able to properly reflect on her time at Nintendo. This is the real killer here. You don't know, this is Jen speaking, you don't know that you live on Death Planet until you leave the Death Planet.
yeah.
After my 10 years there, I was very disappointed at the end. I was very disappointed that I didn't get the dream job. I would have, I didn't get the dream job. I would have worked for Nintendo forever if I could. I loved it there. I loved the job. I was a Nintendo fan. I finished every Zelda game. Um, and we loved working there. We loved working there. We were just being so exploited that we didn't really realize it until we left. At Nintendo, At Nintendo, I did it out of passion and a love for the product, and they know that there's a line out the door of people who will do exactly that for dog food, and that's the sad part. They know that if you complain and you don't want to be there, they can let you go and hire the next gen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely, like, I'm not trying to defend in a way, or, Nintendo as a whole. I'm not saying that. I just feel like because I have actual experience doing
Yeah.
contracting, like, I should give that side too.
There is one incident within NOA, but it's also kind of shitty at NOA too that Jen talked about, the battle to allow contractors to march with Nintendo of America in the annual Pride Parade.
Yeah.
Here I am, transgender, bi, and on top of that, Mexican. I'm sitting there with a straight white woman and a straight white man discussing the Pride Parade, and yet I was the only one there who was qualified to be in it. She says my manager at the time actually asked about it and took it to a fight with upper management, and that is the only time I've ever seen where the associates were allowed to mingle with the Nintendo of America's employees was the Pride Parade, because he had fought for it, and he had fought for that hard, apparently. And even as far as I know, it was only the one time, and several of my gay and bi and lesbian friends were amazed it happened at all. And so was I, honestly. So someone at NOA had to fight really hard with upper management at NOA to allow LBGTQ contract employees of Nintendo to be in the Pride Parade.
Yeah, this is weird because, like, this division between associates, as they call their contractors, and full-time employees is not something that I've seen to this level before.
Yeah, but it just kind of sits there and it's like he had to fight hard for it. Why do you have to fight hard for it? I'm like, how fucking difficult is it to go to someone and say, hey, we have a bunch of contract employees who are LBGTQ. They would like to march in the Pride Parade for the Nintendo of America section. And why is that fucking, like, what part of it is it like they're not really employees of us, they shouldn't be marching with us, kind of thing? It's like, how is that there? Like, to me it kind of speaks volumes of how little the upper management of NOA really sees all these contract employees on that. And when you have this unbelievably simple, soft throw of a home run to hit, that someone has to go to bat for you and fight tooth and nail to allow those people to be in the Pride Parade, because normally they were like, oh, well, you're contractors, fuck you, like, you're not going to be part of our Pride. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, and this is again something
which
that
means
I've
that
never seen.
Yeah, and to me that also tells you that, like, someone at NOA was brought up to, he thought about it, or he or she or whoever at Nintendo of America had to sit there and think about it and had to literally debate. So they are debating how they view the contract employees of NOA versus the full-time employees. Like, that is going through that mind of that person
evidence
there.
They can't deny that they don't make this distinction. Reggie to be like, that's not how it was. There's a lot of evidence saying that executive and leadership class knew and purposely made decisions to keep it this way, Reggie.
Yeah,
that reflects on you
goes
however
beyond
you
just
want.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just like, oh, we don't allow them on the soccer field, we don't allow them in the gym, or we're in the company store or whatever.
How dare they?
Like,
So
this
weird.
is like, this is more than just that. This is more than just sort of like a weird rule we just sort of follow. This is like, why did you have to debate this? Why was this a fight? Like, what kind of weird, creepy culture did fucking Howard Lincoln leave here? Because I've always said this from the beginning, and you look back at the Senate hearings that Howard Lincoln did when he was
Howard Lincoln was a weirdo.
Was a weirdo.
Yeah,
and,
he was a weirdo.
And he's talked about, he's mentioned once or twice in the article too, and I'm just like, he came here, he started this, he's the one who's, just like Bobby Kotick surrounded himself with the scum of humanity to be leading all the head of Activision. Howard Lincoln probably hired all kinds of weird, fucked up people to be running NOA when he was brought up around that. Like, I had heard Minoru Arakawa, which was the son-in-law of the Yamayuchi, before Awada. I heard he was actually a very nice, kind individual, but it was always Howard that kind of seemed to be the weird one. Like he was the one he was the one who murdered basically murdered Conqueror's chances at being successful because
Yeah.
he was so disgusted with it. Um,
What a prude.
yeah,
Fucking
which
prudes, man.
there's a great moment where they talk about Rare was showing Arakawa and Howard Lincoln conquers Bad Fur Day for the first time internally. It's no longer 12 Tales. And they're showing them the level where I guess like you piss on this one boss that's on fire, and
Yes.
like and like you clang his balls or whatever with bricks or whatever. But there's part where like you have to douse out all these enemies on fire with like peeing on them. And apparently Arakawa was laughing his ass off. He was losing his shit. He thought it was the funniest fucking thing ever. And apparently Howard Lincoln was completely like fucking appalled and was like, no coverage in Nintendo Power, no promotion, no marketing, whatever. You do this, you release this on your own. We'll have no part of this. Like he hated it apparently.
Good God.
Um,
Howard
so
Lincoln, I mean, is just the worst time.
and if you talk to any Mariners fans, they hate the motherfucker too.
He's like a numbing condom.
Well, apparently he's like the Bob Chapek for Seattle Mariners because like when he left Nintendo, he went to go run the Seattle Mariners because Nintendo bought them. And apparently people fucking hated him. I don't know the details, but apparently he's very much like the old Clippers owner, where he had a good player, he'd sell them off. He basically just let the Mariners kind of rot and die. So apparently people fucking hated Howard Lincoln,
Wow.
in the baseball fandom. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's a piece of shit.
But he always wore bow ties. So
He always
nice.
wore bow tie. Fuck him. Like, like if Howard
Cute.
Lincoln had his way, there would never ever be mature rated games. Like the market demographic would be a strictly 6 to 11 market share for the entire industry. The man was he would have held back the entire fucking growth of the industry if he could to keep it fucking pure. Like that is the guy that Howard Lincoln was.
I think you could actually make that argument legitimately, especially with he was pretty, if I recall correctly, like anything outside the box. It's not even just like mature games, but wasn't he pretty anti any deviation from the toy aspect? Like he wanted Nintendo to remain
in a sense,
toy.
because that's how Nintendo got successful was
Right.
by putting it in the toy aisle. So he didn't want to leave that space at all.
He didn't want to redefine themselves as a technology company, which is what they define themselves as today. Gaming is a tech sector now, whereas he wanted to be a toy sector. When did he leave?
He left in the early 2000s.
He was right. So Reggie is who replaced him.
Reggie is kind of who replaced him. Yeah, there was some other people, but like Reggie's kind of like he left. There was definitely some meandering years with GameCube, and then Reggie was kind of brought in to sort of like revitalize the whole thing because like the thing was floundering. Like NOA was definitely in a bad space after the launch of the GameCube. Like, and people like, I love the GameCube. I grew up like, bro, like the GameCube before the Wii U, the GameCube was Nintendo's worst selling console of all time.
Yeah.
Yes, worse than the N64. So they were in a bad place. They were not in a good space publicly, critically, commercially. That's why Reggie was brought in.
Which is too bad, really, because the GameCube's great.
It is great. I mean, the system is great. There's great games on it. There's whatever, but like Howard Lincoln, again, like he did not know how to fucking move beyond the fucking toy aisle, and he did not want to.
It's got to be purple and it's got to have a handle.
I mean, that's kind of more of an NCL decision, but still, like,
yeah, but like you see, like the Panasonic GameCube, which looked slick as hell.
Slick as fuck. I don't know why they didn't. I don't know why that wasn't pushed to come out.
What are you doing? Everybody that I know that had a GameCube, like, put that in the center of their entertainment center and was like, it's the sexiest little beat. It looked like a little tiny boombox. I mean, it was a DVD player too, but still, I don't know. It was a great looking system. Didn't have a handle though. Did the GameCube have a? No, it didn't. It didn't have a.
Yes,
handle.
the GameCube had it. Yes, did the GameCube have a handle?
The
yes.
The Q.
Oh, the Q didn't. No,
the Q didn't. The Panasonic GameCube.
Yeah. George Harrison was the. I was almost thought it was a Howard Lincoln quote, but it was a George Harrison, not that George Harrison, but
There's only one George Harrison.
Quote that said, Mario will never start shooting hookers.
Oh, that's too bad. You know, plumber just out there laying pipe with hookers. It was beautiful.
Yeah, like that was kind of like the infamous E3 2003 press conference. People don't want to talk about this, but it's like, yeah, there was this E3 press conference that was like just miserable. Miserable showing for Nintendo. Yeah, I think, and I don't remember if like Howard Lincoln was even there at that point, or if he had moved on to the Mariners. I forget. I don't really care. Fuck him.
He's dead now.
I don't think he is, unfortunately.
Well, you know,
I don't know. Like, it's just, man, it was a really rough time, because like what Nintendo was trying to show off is sort of like, you know, their response to like GTA, you know, and all the big games Sony was bringing out was Pac-Man Versus. We talked about this before. Yeah, Howard Lincoln was there. There's that fucking prick. I'm looking at the footage of 2003.
Just wanted to reminisce on his bow ties.
Fucking
I love how every mention of Howard Lincoln somehow works in a mention of him always using those charming bow ties.
He's not wearing a bow tie in 2003. He's wearing a fucking tie, but yeah, well.
No, but it was a part of his image, those charming bow ties.
Christ, this fucking loser.
Became known for his... Hey, bow ties are sexy. I'm just saying, not because of
You really want to say that in the era of fucker Carlson?
Well, I mean, you know, he's also fucking ruining bow ties, but bow ties are great. Okay.
But yeah, anyways, yeah, there's it's a really good article that kind of goes into it. Stephanie Sterling also actually had, well, they were paraphrasing a Kotaku article, because they'd mentioned that Kotaku article also in the IGN article, and they mentioned how like they're kind of afraid of what Japan's going to do now that this is kind of getting, you know, brought up. But yeah, like
shut down NOA.
Yeah, the latest Jimquisition talked about how, you know, there was a woman who had a concussion, and an NOA employee wouldn't drive her to urgent care because it would be against company policy to escort or drive contractors off site.
Like, and they did not, the campus health services denied her care because she's a contractor, not a employee. What? Where's the Hippocratic Oath on that? That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I all the rest of it is bullshit too, but those healthcare professionals who worked for Nintendo should no longer be healthcare professionals. Is all I'm saying.
That's also true.
You take a fucking Hippocratic Oath, you must provide care.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sucks, but do it.
Like, what sort of misery, well, as they call it, Death Planet, what sort of fucking misery campus are they running up there in Washington? I did like how they pointed out the American branch of the Pokemon Company is completely different.
Yeah, apparently great.
Apparently great place to work. It's there, so
just especially when transfer.
Yeah,
if he can. I guess that's the solution. One thing about the, you know, we've talked about the Pokemon Company's relationship with Nintendo, where they're not owned by Nintendo, but they have very strong financial connections to Nintendo. And I'm wondering if that's the reason why they're not owned by Nintendo, is they just don't want to operate the way Nintendo does.
You know, at this point, I wouldn't blame them.
You know, they want that Nintendo money.
They're probably like, yeah, fuck this. You know, we have a nice cooperative, but like, I'm not being absolved into this shit.
Well, and then, you know, Rare going for Microsoft and stuff. You think about, you know, Rare was not owned by Nintendo, but was very financially linked to them.
Yes. Yeah. Nintendo had a 49% share, you know, of the company, and the owners, the Stamper brothers, had 51. You know, and as that Rare people have told me, like, we could have at any point made a PlayStation game if we wanted to. We were not actually, there was nothing legally preventing us from doing so. We just, you know, it was a partnership. We didn't rock. It was a boat they didn't rock.
Yeah, and why would you? They're doing great.
Yeah.
I do think
That's a
that's interesting.
whole nother ball of wax. But
So
you know,
there's a
here's some other fun stuff though. Like less about like how fucking
Reggie.
shitty LA is, but like Reggie has a new book. You know, changing the game. I think it was what did I misquote that? Disrupting the game. Sorry, disrupting the
Disrupting.
game. It would basically Reggie's memoirs.
From the Bronx to the top of Nintendo.
Yeah, there's a couple like people are already going through it and kind of like making little news articles out of little things. I just thought it'd be fun to highlight a couple of them. Um, which is, and I brought this up on stream with the weekend with the dudes because everyone kept saying how like Nintendo shouldn't be charging so much money for Switch Sports. It should be a free pack-in. And I'm like, Wii Sports was not a free pack. I'm like, yeah, they gave it away for free. No, they fucking didn't.
I thought it was packaged
No,
at some point, but
this is probably what, and Miyamoto would be pissed to know this, but like the Nintendo Wii launched in Japan for $200, had no game pack in. The Nintendo Wii launched in North America and Europe with Wii Sports packed in for $250. You were paying for Wii Sports. We were paying $50 more to have that pack in game. You weren't getting it for free. You thought you were, but you weren't.
it's real smart. That's
But
all I'm saying.
but yeah,
think about how many millions of people only ever owned that game.
Exactly. And here's the crazy thing. That was a fight, apparently. Like apparently Nintendo did not want to bundle Wii Sports with the Wii in North America. Fils-Aimé pushed for the bundle, and initially Iwata turned the proposal down. Nintendo does not give away intriguingly, though, Fils-Aimé explains that the initial suggestions led to the counter proposal from Miyamoto. In a meeting, Miyamoto presented an early version of Wii Play as an alternative, although Fils-Aimé countered to say that it didn't feel like a complete experience compared to Wii Sports, and that in the moment suggested it could be bundled with the Wii Remote instead of as a retail package. Having Wii Play effectively turned down for bundling with the system was apparently a rare occasion of having Wii Play effectively turned down for bundling with the system was apparently a rare occasion of Miyamoto being visibly unhappy. So now Mike Fukuda and I were trying to get agreement on two different bundles. So like, maybe one with or without. And the world's best game designer was not happy. The ever-present smile and impish squint of Mr. Miyamoto's eyes were gone. Neither of you understands the challenges of creating software that people love to play. This is something we constantly push ourselves to do. We do not give away our software, Mr. Miyamoto said.
I think that's the thing is I think it's fair. I think, he's not wrong, but clearly Reggie is right. Like
highlighted that Iwata
clearly it's
and Iwata eventually
a major
relented.
Success.
A key message at the heart of the book, however, was that the disagreements were respectful with Nintendo and rare compared with other companies' strategies, particularly in his relationship with Iwata-san. He mentions that challenging conversations around strategy were handled the right way, and it's clear that there was a bond between the two executives. Basically, Iwata agreed that yes, the markets are different between Japan and North America. Iwata basically conceded that.
I mean, you can't really say a whole lot bad about Iwata, but one thing you definitely, have to admit good is that he sort of understood the two different markets.
Yeah, like
I mean, you could even say three different markets if you want to count Europe.
It's funny though because the mentality we don't give away our software for free. Do you know how much fucking money Epic makes with Fortnite? Do you know how much money Activision makes with Candy Crush Saga?
Yeah.
You know how much money Genshin Impact made in a month?
But they also don't do a whole lot of they don't do free to play bullshit.
Nintendo doesn't.
Yeah.
But
gotta be honest with you, I don't find that as a bad thing.
Granted, this is 2006. This is not now. But I guarantee you Miyamoto has the same fucking mentality today. That's why when they put Mario on the iPhone, it was a $10 game, and all the iPhone market fucking like lost their shit at that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that Super Mario Run was $10, and people were like, "What the fuck?" And my mom was like, "I don't understand. Why is everyone mad about this? I used to have to spend $50 on NES games." My mom was completely like lost as to why that was a problem, and I was like, "That's a funny way of looking at it, Mom." But you're right. Like But yeah, people on iPhone were like, "Why the fuck would we pay $10 for a video game?" Which is why that game really didn't do that well, not nearly as well as they expected.
Well, it was
Um,
basically just Flappy Bird, but with Mario.
Mario. So, so I guarantee you, he still has a
2
mentality,
years
and it's
late.
like, no, these companies are making billions of dollars. Call of Duty Warzone last year made $3 billion. And this is a free to play game. I haven't spent a fucking dime on that trash game.
I spent $10 on it to buy one season
Uh,
pass and just kept rolling
yeah,
over until
rolling
I
it
quit
over.
playing. Yeah.
$3 billion on a free to play game, a game you can play for fucking free.
It's, I
Like,
mean, if you make something quality and you offer things people want that isn't gameplay
yeah,
changing, unfortunately, a lot of the guns are, but, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think it's brilliant.
yeah.
Um,
So what I'm getting at here is that Miyamoto's a fucking dinosaur,
well,
and it all just kind of flows into this sort of like this mentality that Japan still wants to pretend it's 1986.
I don't remember where I read this, but basically the idea is after 50, you stop being about changing things and start being about keeping things the way they were.
Hmm.
Like you just, like all your innovation happens before
Yeah.
50, and then after 50, you're just kind of like fighting to keep it the same as the world you understood.
But like here's the thing. I firmly believe that if Miyamoto won that fight and Iwata sided with Miyamoto on it in the end, and the Wii was only ever sold a la carte, I don't think it would have ever been nearly as much of a success.
No.
I think it would have been half as successful.
Well, it's anecdotal, but I know, I don't know, at least 5 people I can think of who bought literally 4 Wii Sports in their dorm room.
That was
That's why they
fucking
bought the
it.
goddamn Wii, and it looked like a Mac.
Yeah.
That helped. The
Maybe they
design.
bought Wii Play because it came with a controller, which was also a thing Reggie pushed for.
That's yeah, because they didn't
So
want to do that, right? They wanted to be purely.
yeah, they wanted to do it a la carte. They wanted to do it as it always was. I'm going to sell you Wii Play for $50 fucking dollars.
Yeah,
Nothing else.
no, thank you.
So yeah, we saw what happened with Wii Music was like the ultimate like. I wonder if that was even a humbling experience for Miyamoto, where it was like, Wii Sports huge, like Wii Play huge, these bundled games are huge, Wii Fit's doing huge. Here's Wii Music, fucking disaster.
Probably no one told him. I think something that we're learning all over the world, but I think something that we're learning in hierarchies like that, no one tells that guy. That guy
Well,
is the last to learn.
Well, here's the last thing that I think we should probably want to bring up. And it's funny because I've always said this just as a belief, not as I know it, but I'm like I've always been like, guys, Reggie did not stop Mother 3 from coming out. Everyone thinks he did, but I'm like, he totally didn't. And in
No, he
Reggie's
killed
new
it.
book,
He killed it in his sleep. He did that on purpose. I know he
so
did.
in his book, he says the initial decision not to launch the game had happened before I joined the company, but certainly afterwards, I had many conversations with Mr. Iwata about the game, about the fan passion, and certainly the perspective. And certainly the perspective was the first game on the Super NES had not sold all that well. Certainly, as I've gone back to look at it, the marketing wasn't great. I think it was marketed some bizarre way, like this game stinks. He's absolutely correct. Came with they marketed it as this game stinks, and there was a scratch and sniff thing in Nintendo Power, or something like that. It really was not the best marketing activity behind the launch of a new game because it hadn't sold well. Because yes, there's a lot of time and financial investment in localizing this type of content. It just really wasn't a priority. And then when it's at the point where we're putting all our effort on Nintendo DS and games like Metroid Prime Hunters and Mario Kart DS and Pokemon for DS, it really just was not a strong business priority. But boy, the game journalist had to ask me every single time. And then he says there was a serious conversation during the Nintendo 3DS days and as we launched the Wii U that we should look at making the game available digitally through our digital storefront because at that point the production and distribution costs are the minimus. We had already had conversations about having a group of games that were not localized, that it was the pure Japanese game made available, and we did that for a number of titles. They did okay. Mr. Wada and I had that conversation about Mother 3. What ended up happening is that we launched the first Mother game called Earthbound Beginnings on the Wii U eShop. That's a sense of the conversations that were happening in the thought process. And who knows? If Mr. Wada had not passed away, if maybe the Wii U had done better in the marketplace, maybe the Mother 3 game would have made it at that point. So there were certainly conversations, but it would have needed to have been done the right way.
It's like, you just should have bought the Wii U. You should have done it,
Right.
guys. It's your fault that Mother 3 didn't come out.
And they asked him about like that E3 Robot Chicken sketch they did. He's like, it was a great way to recognize that certainly there was fan energy and fan support for the game. Certainly it was a bit of a wink and a nod to that journalist community who was constantly asking me about the game and having a little bit of fun in our video-based E3 presentation to throw a fireball at a journalist who had asked me just one too many times.
I mean, he's I think one thing you can say about Reggie is he was definitely a very charming.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. He had those conversations. He was talking about bringing it here. But it just, they probably just could never make financial sense out of it because, like, and Nintendo knows this. People who whine on the internet do not represent 1 million sales or 2
No.
million game sales. Like, this is an RPG. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of localization. There's some questionable content in Mother 3. Is the money it's going to take to release? And Reggie even went back and even said, like, hey, maybe we could do it digitally. We could minimize, we don't have to ship it to retail. Like, he actually went back. Like, so he followed up on it. It's not like it's not like he shot the idea down once, just said, fuck it, and this never talked about it again. It was something he brought up and actually thought about, maybe we could do it this way, maybe we could do it that way. Here's the one thing I will say, though. There's nothing stopping them from releasing it digitally on the Switch. Like, oh, well, the Wii U didn't do successful, blah, blah, blah. Like, who cares? Like,
Switch is murdering it, yeah, so...
Switch is murdering it. Like, you could still...
Yeah.
You could still put it out for $20 on the Switch and people will gobble it up. You know, there's those rumors about the GBA coming to the Switch. There you go. There you go.
That'd be great.
I mean,
just
like,
recently found my my GBA.
Yeah, well, nice. Again, it still would have to be, they're going to have to spend time localizing it, translating it, releasing it. It's going to cost money, but I'm sorry, Nintendo, you make a lot of money, and as we learned today, you sure do like saving money by not hiring employees. So
a mixed bag Nintendo week.
Like I'm sorry, Nintendo, but it's like you're skyrocketing in your profits, but you're running your NOA side like you're basically scraping by. So,
oof.
I'm sure that's great in a business sense, but I also I'm just sitting here like, yeah, just release Mother 3, do it now. What's stopping you?
Release Mother 3. That's
And I don't even and you know what? And I don't even care about that game. I don't have any interest in playing it. And I'll probably be like, it's one of the greatest games ever made. Whatever. Maybe it is. But like, personally, I don't have any like dying desire to play the game. But I will say that, like, you're not gonna. How much money are you really gonna fucking lose at this point releasing it digitally on Switch?
Well, especially if they don't even bother to localize it.
Apparently, Reggie mentioned that too. Like, I even thought about just, fuck it, throw the Japanese version up there.
Yeah. See what happens. On that note, we've got producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideoGamesPodcast. Our producers for this episode are The Arnett, Screwnomi, Top 35, HyperViper89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.